Robert next.
Hey, I'm Robert. I use he and him pronouns or anything respectful, so even bitch is okay as long as you say it respectfully. And yeah, I don't know. There's lots of important things about me, but we're here to talk about polyamory, so I'm super excited.
That's an important thing about you right there.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mel.
Hi, I'm Mel. I use they, them pronouns. Guess a fun fact about me is I play an embarrassing amount of otome games, which are like Japanese visual novels slash dating sims. It's really bad how much I play them.
I'm right there with you, as
My
we've
library is too
discussed.
big.
And we have Raffy.
Hey everybody, I'm Raffy. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I too play an obsessive amount of video games. However, I am proud of myself because I have been very committed to only spending money on one, and that is Genshin Impact.
I love that.
Priorities.
Because that definitely makes it better.
So, hi, my name is Booribap. I go by the pronouns she, they. Important fact about me, I also play a ridiculous amount of video games that replicate the love that I want to see in life. So, Otome games, our life. And the recent one I've been obsessed with is Boyfriend Dungeon. So, with that, yeah, that's yeah. We are gonna start off super easy, right? We are here to discuss gaming culture and polyamory. So we're just gonna go with the definition of polyamory. Google defines it as the practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships. I'm gonna take out a part of that definition. Relationships with the consent of all the people involved. So everyone knows what the Google definition is while we start this conversation. Now I want to hear from our wonderful speakers what they define. Does your definition differ from what's in Google? And if anything, what's the important takeaway to know, the must-have about polyamory? Rafi, I see you smiling, and I feel like that's like something is bubbling in you that you want to say.
I've been very excited for this panel for a very long time, and I really appreciate you for starting with the Google definition because I think that Google has a way of standardizing where the general population is, like where the
Mhm.
general consensus is in our like part of the world, I guess,
Right.
um, around like how are we defining polyamory, and yet. My lived experiences with polyamory are going to differ from Mel's and from Robert's, and we're going to learn that throughout this time. So, how I define polyamory is having the capacity to be attracted to one or more people in a romantic or emotional way. Um, there doesn't always have to be a sexual or sensual component to it, and we can really expand on that as we continue having these conversations. But I like to define it as one or more.
Beautifully defined. Thank you, Rafi. Would anyone else like to add to that definition?
Sure. I make a distinction between polyamory, polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, which I think are often lumped together. So to me, polyamory is similar to what Rafi said. It's an identity. So you don't, a lot of people will say you have to be in multiple romantic relationships to be poly. I don't agree with that. I think it's about whether or not you're the sort of person who ideally would like to have multiple romantic relationships. And then ethical non-monogamy, the distinction I make there is usually it's not as serious of a relationship.
Mm.
Um, so to me, polyamory, like the literal definition is like loving multiple people. So
I love that. I love that. Um, any other need to adds before we go on to our next super exciting question?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo what Mel said because I think like the fact of whether you are in relationships with multiple people at one time or not does not mean, like, that is not the wherewithal of whether or not you are poly. Like, you know that you are gay if you are attracted to someone of the same gender or like queer, right? And like whether you're in a relationship or not doesn't mean that you're not queer. And so like it is not just the act of polyamory, it's the capability of. And I think that that's something that's really important to sort of like, just being poly doesn't mean that you are in poly relationships. You could be in a monogamous relationship and still be poly. Um, no spoilers.
No spoiler.
So I would 100% like to get that tattooed onto my forehead, just for all aspects of queer reality. It is not the act of. Thank you so much, Albert, for adding that, because that just made me live on a whole nother plane of existence. Thank you. I love that. So we're also here to talk about gaming. So in what ways does gaming intersect your poly experience?
So I'm gonna jump into this one real quick, just because Booribap, you had started us off by mentioning Boyfriend Dungeon, and
I had
I
to.
am I shamelessly admit that I binged through that game this week. This game just released this week, and it was a really tough week for me. I lost someone very near and dear to me, and when I say that I jumped into that game at the best possible time, I mean it was the first time I ever played a game where it is a dating simulator, but it's also a lot like Dungeons and Dragons, where you are dungeon crawling, right? And
Mhm.
you are literally building different relationship styles with the weapons that you carry with you into the dungeons, right? And I'm like, I need life to be more like this, because sometimes you just want to stab a bitch, but you want to do it with someone near and dear to your heart, and that's okay. I think that's a very healthy response to dating life in New York City, and yeah.
Like specifically stat. I don't want to do spoilers. I'm just gonna. You have to play the game to find out.
Better
But
not spoil.
I know. I was like, no spoilers. But yeah, Boyfriend Dungeon is a recent example of that, right? It's probably the most recent and biggest example of poly in games. And Mel, you're gonna be my dating sim Otoe expert here. We don't get the poly aspect that often. We get like a whisper of poly in dating sims, a hint. But how how important is that in sort of those dating sim games, or having that change of you could date multiple versus you could only pick one and only one route?
I mean, I think it's definitely important to me. It's always really interesting. So for anyone who's not familiar with Otome games, they follow a very specific formula. In general, it's a woman main character and five love interests. Usually they're all men. And usually one of them is locked, and so you have to play all the other routes to access the last one. And you go through and you date each person, and the main character has like a different personality, usually based on each person. And so it kind of almost feels like polyamory, because you're seeing the same person date different people. But yeah, exactly, at no point you're like monogamous with that person in the root. And am pretty active on the Reddit, and there has been talk recently about like wishing that there were more like polyamorous options in these games. But part of the problem is that it's such a niche genre,
Mm-hmm.
and also just like the gaming companies don't want to move away from the formula, I think.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I wish more games. So there's dating aspects in other games, right?
Yep.
More mainstream games. But same thing. You're sort of locked into monogamy with that person. Or if you decide to stray the path, the other characters somehow find out, and then you lose all of your love. Why
There's
is that?
actually one exception to this that I can name. It's a fairly well-known one. Stardew Valley. They won't let you marry multiple people, but you can
Ooh.
date every single character at once. And if you keep a special item in your inventory, they won't get upset at you when they all find out that you're dating all of them.
Really,
It's like a
truly
line item.
reflecting real life. You
Yeah,
have a
that,
special item for me?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
that's fine, I guess.
So transactional.
Yeah, like okay,
Yeah.
I guess we're fine. Thank you
Correct me
for
if
I
I'm
didn't know
wrong.
that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was something in Skyrim where you could. There are lots of romanceable characters in Skyrim,
Mhm.
and I believe you could go, all the way with one of them. But I don't think it locked out anyone else's romance paths. But I think it did this thing where it was like, oh, if you want to finish this person's romance path, you have to give up your relationship with
Yep.
the character whose romance path you just completed in order to do this.
I
And
think a
so
lot of
here's
games do
here's
that.
me running around trying to romance any of like the male NPCs in the game that you can actually romance. And then it being like, hey, sorry, but can only do one. And then cosmically, I guess the other person just finds out about this, even if you're on the other
they
side of the
get a
map.
text message on their rock, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
There's a question in the chat. Does Hades count as polygame canon?
I want to say yes, but like in a very non-sexual way. It's like a platonic poly relationship where they all have very deep love for each other, but none of them are screwing, unfortunately.
Too bad.
They have sex in Hades. Well, that's a conversation for the end of
I
this
haven't
panel.
played that
You know,
yet, so.
that definition gives me a very weird relationship with Five Nights at Freddy's, and I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, we're gonna have a conversation about that later. We need to dig deep into that for sure.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know.
So all of you have these games, right, that you've played, that you've had romanceable characters, and we're trying to find loopholes. We either want to have sex with them when we can't have sex with them, or we're trying to date as many of them as we can. So we're trying to find these loopholes. But how have these games, these dateable, like, when you can romance a character in a game, how have they sort of framed or changed your outlook on poly in your real life? And please don't say you have to give someone a gift to make them forgive you.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I think there's something to be said about the fact that I was looking up all the Skyrim characters that I could romance and having a really hard time because I was like, I want to date like 7 of these people, but I'm only allowed 1. And being frustrated about that.
That sounds like real life. I want to date all 7 of you, and I can only date 1 of you. I will say, I don't want to date 7 people. That just sounds like a lot of work.
I don't have enough brain.
Yeah.
I have enough heart. But I don't have enough
totally
brain.
have enough heart, but that's a lot of effort.
Google Calendar becomes very important.
Oh.
I'd say 3 is probably most people's cap if it's like a very serious relationship. I did 4 at one point, with 1 being long distance. That was really intense.
Oh. Yeah, I think mentally, I think 3 is like my limit.
Yep.
Mentally.
At one point, I had 2 partners at the same time, and it was a lot of work. And it was my first time having more than 1 partner at the same time, and I think that I wouldn't have had the healthy relationships that I had were it not for having had access to other people whose lived experiences in polyculture were coming from a healthy space that were inclusive of trans, non-binary people, Black, Latinx folks, right? Like having access to their lived experiences were providing me the tools that I needed to be able to explore that part of who I am.
Yeah, I love that. It's sort of, I think even in a queer space, you need sometimes those relationships where it's kind of like you have a mentor and the person that you love. And I love, well, it can go wrong very quickly, but I love that when it's right. And you grow so much from those experiences. I really do love that, and that you brought up that those relationships do help you grow and develop as a person. So we're kind of talking about numbers, right? And I'm gonna curse. So if you are under 18, close your ear holes. But we're gonna talk about misconception about polys, right? So the idea is that we're just left and right fucking and sucking with 5, 10, whatever, whenever, wherever we want, no matter what. And that is a misconception, right? So what are some other misconceptions that you kind of want to clarify or debunk or set the record straight?
Just
Well, I
because
mean, actually,
someone says
what's
they're
like frustrating? What's frustrating about the like? Oh, it's just people going left and right, fucking and sucking like 15 people. So what? Okay.
I was
Like,
and
okay.
Yeah,
that's
I was
my
also
right.
I was like,
So-
all right, so enough about Tuesday. But
Yeah. It's like, okay, so they might be fucking and sucking 15 different people. What about it?
right. Yeah, I think for like even just with that, I think the misconception is that that's every relationship or that's every person's lived reality. And I think that there's not enough discussion about it is whatever is happening is specific to that set group of people who are involved in whatever relationship. And those relationships can be different from person to person, right? And so, like, poly doesn't mean that everybody in that grouping is dating everyone. Maybe I'm dating two people who are not involved at all. Maybe they're friendly. But I think it is every single relationship is different, and that what is acceptable and not acceptable is specific to those relationships, and it has nothing to do with what you think or what you think because they are all so different. Every iteration of them is different.
And I want to go back to the Google definition. It has everyone's consent.
Yeah. Totally.
Everyone's consent. Everyone that is involved understands. And there are types of relationships where it's don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
You do you, I do me, and when we're together, we love each other, and that's as important. But that's, once again, I am consenting to you not telling me jack shit, and I appreciate that. So Mel, I know you wanted to add, but I wanted to emphasize the consent portion of all of this.
I was going to say two things. So one, I really hate like the automatic sexualization of people who are in poly relationships, because like just because someone is poly does, like, you can be ace or arrow and like in poly relationships, like there's nothing that says there has to be sex. Like there was a point in time when I was dating someone who was ace, and like they specifically went to find another partner who was ace because they would like mesh better. And so it's really frustrating because like I remember being at work and like telling people I was poly and dating multiple people, and them just like immediately the look on their face. But like if people talk about being married and having kids, like you literally have actual evidence of people having sex, but like that's not a problem for some reason. And then the other thing I was going to say is that I think a huge problem with poly is that there are a lot of people who call themselves poly that aren't actually practicing ethical non-monogamy. There are a lot of people who will say they're poly to make other people feel comfortable, and in reality they're like not telling their partner about what's going on. And it's a very common thing, and once you kind of like get involved in the community, you'll be able to tell the difference between the people. But that was the thing I didn't understand when I first moved to New York City and started dating multiple people, and it was a weird thing to navigate.
Yeah. Being poly is not cheating. Cheating is cheating.
Exactly.
Yes.
And you can cheat while poly. I will say that.
Yeah.
That's a thing. Like if you have an agreement, like that you can cheat while poly. I think that's another thing a lot of people think is like that you can't cheat, like you can just do whatever you want. Exactly what you said, Ori. It's like there are rules, there's specific consent.
Rules and regulations.
That's right.
Yeah. And if your rule is no rules, that's fine, but that's still a rule, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and back to the consent part. That's so important. That's the only way poly relationships can flourish and grow and be beneficial to all parties, is that consent, that understanding, those open communication prior to engaging in whatever y'all want to engage in. So I will scream to the heavens about consent in poly relationships. Rafi, I saw you locked and loaded. Was there anything you wanted to add?
I think that y'all said everything that I was thinking. I really value that. One thing I was thinking about more specifically, kind of echoing off of what Mel was sharing, is, as someone who is, I'm Black, Boricua, non-binary. I carry my identities on my sleeve, right? It's very challenging for me to navigate polyculture in New York City specifically, right? Because of the fact that polyculture has gotten to a place where it's very subcultural, right? Like there's a lot of territory in it, especially in places like Brooklyn, where everyone has dated each other in some
Or
way, shape, or
All
dating.
of New
form,
York
or
City.
they're dating
Currently
each other.
dating.
Yeah,
All of New
for
York
real,
City,
right?
really
There's like
though.
this there's like this queer Illuminati of people who are sleeping with each other or love each other. And I think that's beautiful and that's amazing. But I don't have the capacity to fill out the application form that's necessary to sync my Google Calendar with theirs.
You
And
can say the
that's
Google
okay,
form.
right? I'm like, let me know where in the Bronx there is a polycule of folks who like to play dominoes on Sunday and then Sunshine Orchard Beach. And maybe, just maybe, I found my polycule. Until then, I think that I am but a lonely star in the sky trying
Aw.
to find their constellation. And that's absolutely okay. I think
I
that that
love that
doesn't
so
discredit
much.
my being poly or minimize my truth in that.
Rafi, my love, I'm gonna get you a business cards with like the scanner code thing. It's gonna look Google form. So you just pass those out. When you see someone fine as fuck, you just here you go.
Here's
My
the application
info.
for
Here's
my
the app. Scan
polycule.
your phone, you get the application, and we can discuss how we can become constellations.
I would like for you to apply for my polycule. Thanks.
I'm a recruiter. I need you to apply to this, please. You have the talent, the looks. Take it.
I mean,
Imagine,
speaking of
imagine if
recruiting, I think that it is both not surprising and amazing. So I'd like for those of you that don't know, all five of us are all part of NYC Gamers. We all came to NYC Gamers in very different ways, and we all identify as poly, which I do not think is like I think it is both absolutely amazing and not super surprising. Like I think that
Yeah.
it's just like the fact that we are um I don't know, I think that that's kind of a beautiful thing and that we all have very different we're all at different points and really like have different experiences, but it's super cool.
Yeah,
And we didn't
energy.
realize that until we put this panel together and we were
Yeah.
looking at it going, wait a minute.
And there was
Energy
even supposed
attracts
to
the
be
same
one more
energy.
NYCG board
Yes.
member on this panel who's also poly.
Yes.
So
And that's just for this panel. Like,
yes.
we're not even discussing the entire community or every other
Yes,
board
exactly.
member. So who knows? But with that, I do want to bring up also, staying on the trend of being transparent and all encompassing is that you can be poly in a monogamous relationship. I am a living example of that, and I do not have any issues saying that. Because once again, we're talking about consent. So your partner may not be into that, for lack of a better word, and that is okay. You are still poly. I am, I identified as bi for a very long time. Was I dating a girl? No, I was with a guy, but as Robert mentioned, it is not the act of. It is your identity, is your reality. So you can be monogamous and still be poly. Um, so it's very, very important for me to bring up for people who maybe aren't in or maybe have never identified or thought of poly before, and maybe this is resonating with you. It's super, super possible. It's just choosing where your love is going. That is it. Rafi, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that polyamory is a lot like Dungeons and Dragons, where you have your character sheet, right? You go through your character creation, and that's kind of like your dating profile, in a way, right? That's kind of like you introducing yourself to the world.
Mhm.
And I believe that there's always room for your character to cross class, right? I was gonna say cosplay.
That too.
I know what's on your mind,
that
That
Raffy.
too.
enough. But you know, there's always capacity for your character to cross class. Now I was gonna say crossplay. What is going on with me today? But you know, the fact of the matter is, you don't ever have to be. You know, there are some people who like being the paladin, and they are the paladin from levels 1 through 20, and that's them living their best life, right? And that is beautiful. And there are fighters and there are sorcerers, and then you have those who are rogue wizards, and you have those who are rogue wizard monks, and that is their business. And multi-class, thank you. What is wrong with me today?
So
I'm
the
like,
whole word was wrong.
shite. Like I'm like, I blame Boyfriend Dungeon for this because they use nothing but puns like polyamory.
This is
And
true. Yeah.
but you know, the fact of the matter is, as someone who's poly, I believe that we all have the potential to be more than, and that's the beauty of what it is to be poly, right? And there's a misconception that polyamory is deeply centered on romantic attraction as well as sexual attraction, when we as queer people know that those things don't always align, right? And the relationship or the partnerships that you build with one or more persons may not always be similar to the partnerships that you build with one or more others, right? So I think that it's a very personal and beautiful relationship that you share with people throughout your polycule, and it's very subjective. That doesn't minimize or take away from your lived experience. And you throw gaming on top of that, and it's a whole nother world. And that's the beauty of gaming culture. You know, I have people in my life where, you know, we're not romantic partners, but they're the folks that I play Overwatch with. And then there's another group that I play D&D with, and we're friends. And I have friends that I have sexual relationships with, friends that I have sensual non-sexual relationships with, right? We cuddle and we're chosen family. I have friends in my relationships are platonic, you know? It doesn't take away from the fact that my capacity to love them is abundant. There are rules, there are agreements, there's a very healthy communication style that happens. I think that where we're having conversations about polyamory often starts with romantic attraction, but I've met many people who are aromantic who do not experience romantic attraction, and people who are asexual or on the asexual spectrum who are polyamorous. And I think that they matter and they belong, and they're also a part of these conversations.
Yeah, what I'm
Thank you,
what I'm
Raffy.
finding in my adult life is that the lines between like friends, relationships, partners, close relationships, romantic relationships, besties, like it's all like very, very blurry lines. And they're up to whoever's in the situation and up to every single different person. Because like I have friends who I like would just sort of like hang out with. I have friends who I love as dearly as I would like a romantic relationship. Like it's all very blurry, and that's fine.
I
I mean,
couldn't agree more.
yeah, I think that's. It's also really important that like we are the ones that we apply all of the connotations, assumptions, requirements, and whatever it is to the labels that we apply to the people that are in our lives, right? And so I will say this is my best friend, and my definition of best friend might be different than your definition of best friend. And, you know, the expectations of what someone might do in your life because you've applied this label to them is very different too. And so I think it's really important when we're talking about polysexual, polyromantic, whatever, that you understand that, you know, it is very individual and that, you know, and it's fluid too. right? Like it doesn't, just because um, the relationship is one way today, it doesn't mean that it's going to be that way forever. But I know many people who are poly who have had people in their lives where relationships might be iterative, and maybe it started sexual and that was all it was and it was great, and then it moved into something that was more romantic, and then the sex stopped but the love was still there, and so like it's just sort of like this. It is like the never-ending D&D campaign, really, because it can be so fluid and changing.
Yeah.
But and you level up and you change, and relationships grow and change. And I think that um, as a poly person, you can really benefit from the practice of it, because you have to be a really good communicator. And Mel will tell you that you need a calendar
Yes. You
or
need a
two.
calendar. And you need to share it.
Yes.
Like, with everyone in your polycule and
Yes.
put events on the calendar.
Yes.
I wanted to add something to this. So I, like Corey, am also in a monogamous relationship. I am actually married, and as of almost a year ago, and I actually met him while I was dating 4 other people. Seriously, like very seriously. And TLDR, polycules get complicated, especially when people in polycules are dating each other. So, like, the girlfriend of my girlfriend is dating my boyfriend, stuff like that. And my polycule imploded, and my husband, now husband, was the only one that was not a part of the polycule. And we ended up together, and we just kind of figured out that he's just like the most monogamous person I've ever met in my life. And he, like everyone always tells you, like, I feel like the experience of femme people in poly is very different than the experience of masc people, because there's this like bullshit of like everyone's dream woman is someone who wants to date multiple people or is like okay with their partner dating multiple people. And then I end up with this guy who's like, absolutely not. No, I don't want that. And it was a really hard adjustment for us, because I don't think he fully understood. This is something that Ben said the other day among us about how he just has like so much love to give. And I feel the exact same way. And so when I started dating my husband monogamously, he just like didn't know how to handle it, because it was just like so much. And he was used to being, he was used to being like in less intense relationships. And so actually a big reason I got involved in NYC Gamers was because I had lost a lot of my like support network via losing my polycule, because I was also friends with a lot of people in my polycule. And I was like, I need to find a new group of people. And so I redirected a lot of that love at my friends. And that is like, I used to be one of those people that was mostly like, was the person who like prioritized the romantic relationship, and like the friends took the back burner. And I think honestly, like being in a monogamous relationship has made me like appreciate and love and just like have time for my friends much more. And like Ben said, it's very, or excuse me, I think it was, no, it was Ben and Robert. But it's very fluid, right? Like I I've on the one hand, my love for my husband is different than my friends, but on the other hand, it's not. Like if someone asked me to like choose between something that one of my best friends really needed and something that my husband really needed, that would be a difficult decision for me. That wouldn't just be an easy answer.
Yeah. I think thank you for bringing that up, because it's something that not enough people discuss, and sort of because that love doesn't go away when you join a monogamous relationship. That love
Yes.
does not go away. It has to go somewhere or we will explode. So I definitely agree with that, where you end up redirecting your love into those friendships. And it's something that just sort of, it sometimes it happens naturally, sometimes you sort of force it because you don't realize you're doing that, and that sort of becomes a little crazy. I've been on that end where where you have those sort of platonic relationships that you have such a deep love for that person, the person that they are, and not necessarily that you want to have sex with them. Maybe you do want to have sex with them, but What matters is that regardless of that physical or romantic aspect of it, you have a deep love for that person and you're still in a monogamous relationship. And that's something that I have done for a very long time. It was just our 8-year anniversary, right? So I still have friends that I love very, very deeply. And I used to have friends that, you know, like they would come over and nap in my bed with me. But it was not anything romantic or sexual. It's just wanting to be close to someone sometimes. Um, so I think it's a pretty good segue to communication, right? So consent, communication, being honest, being open. Has gaming had, and if so, had a positive impact on your ability to communicate with your partners? And if so, sort of how? What did you take away from what game? And how did that help you communicate better?
I'm gonna go
So-
first before everybody else jumps in because I'm the least gamer. My poly, I'm very attracted to gamers. We'll start there.
I feel like no one's ever said that before.
What do you mean? Like
No,
being attracted to gamers?
Being very
I think
attracted to only
I am.
gamers.
Well, I mean, I'm not only gamers, but I also am someone who's very nebulous, and I think of games in a whole other way. And like Raffy and I can go on like these 3-hour conversations about like how being kinky is gaming too. Right. And so like really thinking about gamer romantic exactly. But I think that the ways that gaming, I think the thing that I love about games is gaming always brings people together. Like it can bring people together. And so it's like I think of some of like my favorite board games, like just my absolute favorite board game is not even a board game. It's like a word game. It's called Categories. Because I love words and I like being able to play with words and it's a really smart game. But I just think of like how much fun it is to just play with someone, and then the play fighting and the competitive nature of gaming, and like all of that is just it just creates space for. Categories is absolutely polyam. But it's the play. It's that playful excitement that you get to do with people that you want to spend time and space with. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about gaming and being poly and how it impacts it.
Thank you. Who else wants to add? Because I know y'all were getting brought your mics down so fast.
Yeah,
I'm like, ooh,
yeah.
me next. Well, I'm avoiding. So it's like hunting me. So okay, just where do I start? Okay, so basically, I had a partner that I was with for 2.5 years, and I met someone, and my partner knew that I was polyamorous, but I never explored of actually like dating someone aside from like my primary partner at that time, right? This person just came into my life in a very unexpected way, and I really wanted to pursue it. And my primary partner was very supportive of me, but it was not easy. It was not easy whatsoever, right? There was a lot of conversations about jealousy and discomfort and territory, and they were very healthy conversations. We needed to talk about it. If anything, it strengthened connection, right? The way that game ended up becoming something that actually healed what became my partnerships at the time was that I kept trying to find ways to connect the both of them because I loved them for two very unique reasons, right? And yet the one thing that I realized connected them at the time. So as a gift, I bought a Pokemon game for my primary partner and for my more I asked him, I was like, hey, aren't you already playing this game? So I was like, hey, listen, my partner's going to be with me this weekend. You're free. Why don't you come over and we'll just do some like den raids together in Pokemon Sword and Shield. And we did that and they spent time together. And by the end of it, my second partner was, do you feel comfortable with me spending the night? And I asked my primary and they were like, yeah, I don't want them to leave. What started off as just like a casual like game night with both my partners supporting me became them befriending one another, finding that connection in gaming, And for the first time in my entire life, and what I hope is not the last time, I had this like night cuddle session that was very sensual and not sexual, where I had my partners with me and I felt whole in ways that I never felt with just one partner, because I felt like I was able to bring this very important part of my identity into a space that is safe for me. And I'm like, yo, Pokemon did that. I'm like, it really was
Shout out
Pokemon that did
Pokemon.
shit, you know? They they still need to stop asking me if I'm a boy or a girl at the beginning of the game, but kudos.
They
I
do. They
love
did
that.
stop doing that.
There we go.
They just show
Podcast.
you a bunch of pictures and they say, pick one. That's what you look like.
That's what you look like. Oh, I love
Oh my
that.
god, gotta catch them all.
That's the thing that people say all the time about poly. Really, yeah.
Very yes. So I want to give, if no one wants to add anything else to that. Okay. So I do want to give everyone a moment to, we're at 5 minutes, or about to be at 5 minutes. I want to give everyone a chance to sort of their parting words about poly, about gaming, about themselves, where we can find you, what you're working on, all that important stuff. Okay. We are going to start with Mel, the wonderful Mel.
Hi. I guess so. Final words on poly. I think one of the biggest things that poly, being poly and dating multiple people seriously at the same time gave me was much better communication skills. I think I thought I was a good communicator before I was in multiple relationships, and I didn't really understand until I was in multiple relationships how much of a gap there was, and then also like adjusting to different communication styles. And I really wish that monogamous people would learn how to communicate like a lot of poly people have learned to communicate. In terms of where you can find me, pretty much on every social, I'm at Mel, M-E-L, Malia, M-A-L-I-A, Cone, C-O-N-E. And I am also the event owner for the Gamer Lounge, which is happening right now. You all should join. We have a bunch of fun stuff happening. We have some TTRPGs that are going to be starting around now. We have some game showcases where people teach you games, meetups, and just general hanging out. I'm going to create a voice chat for the NYC Gamers Table, and y'all can come talk to me if you want to. It's in Discord. There should be a link in the main hall.
I muted myself. Thank you. Ben, where can we find you?
I'm just like over there. Just pick a direction.
In this
You'll find
general
me.
area.
I'm in some places. I'm on Instagram. That's where I put all my art stuff. That's at Art with Ghosts with underscores in between it. I'm on all of the NYCG socials. So if you ever DM the socials and somebody answers, it's probably me. So you can just be like, "Hi Ben." Or
You're gonna get messages. Hey Ben, how are you doing today?
yeah,
How are you?
like, oh,
Did you
okay.
Did you eat lunch today?
It's okay. All right. That's where you can find me. Last thought to leave everybody with, some advice from me. Just if you feel polyamorous feelings, just let them happen. Don't try and have a fight with it. I spent way too long being like, oh my god, what is this? What is this called? What do I call this person? What are all the words and labels for everything? Instead of just sitting there and being like, this is nice.
I second that a million, trillion, billion times.
Just just sit and say, this is nice.
Enjoy it. Enjoy it while we all have it, right?
Yes.
Robert?
I am. You can find me everywhere and anywhere at Papa Bear Podcast. We'll give you the safe for work accounts. There are others.
It's not a safe for work podcast.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's safer than my other accounts. But anyway, I digress. Last thoughts. Yeah. So at Papa Bear Podcast, if you want to find me, at NYC Gamers, if you want to find us, like anything NYC Gamers, you will find all of us because we are there. And then just I think in terms of a final thought, if you are someone who is monogamous, do not think that dating someone that is poly is wrong or bad. Like, don't just write them off because they've told you that they're poly up front. I guarantee you that you will never find a better communicator than someone who is poly. And with communication being such a pillar of any good relationship, don't be so quick to write us off, because I have really hard and strong feelings about people who are like, oh, you're poly, and they just don't even want to talk to you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it's totally your loss, but I think for the folks that are like really trying to learn and to understand, I think just recognizing that, like, dismissing someone because you don't understand something it's a really poor look on your part.
Very yes. And Rafi?
You can find me on all social media as you can find me in all things NYC Gamers at official NYCG. I posted in the chat our link tree where you can find all of our social media platforms and how to connect with NYC Gamers. At NYC Gamers, we believe that the Y in gamers means you belong. And sex with polyculture is, first of all, like what we said before, we didn't even know that a majority of board of directors is polyamorous. So that speaks volumes, right? Like, that wasn't intentional. That's just something that came to be. That being said, I love my team. I love my community. I've had the privilege of meeting other polyamorous people throughout my relationships with culture. And I believe that gaming has easily become a positive influence and impact what is polyamorous culture and where are we as a culture moving towards having healthier dating and relationships. Appreciate the time that we took today to have these conversations. Thank you so much, Booribap, for moderating for us today. Thank you to all the participants for sharing your weekend and your energy with us.
Yes, it was my absolute pleasure. Per usual, I love having these conversations with y'all. Yeah. Hi, my name is Booribap. I am basically everywhere on social media. So TikTok, Twitter, Twitch. I stream weekly on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, all that good stuff. You will find me at Booribap, Booribap, where I am constantly screaming to the heavens about 2D boys and girls and thems and wanting to screw almost everyone in any possible video game ever, even the monsters, specifically Dead by Daylight. But Ben's my twin flame.
Oh yes.
But yeah, I want to just end it there. And if anyone has any questions, Mel, we're gonna have a Discord table, correct?
Yeah, there's going to be a voice chat once I leave this panel and create it.
And you're gonna probably see some of us
In the
around
gamer lounge, right?
In the gamer lounge, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, you all are welcome to join too, whomever.
Yeah.
Come talk to us one-on-one.
Or we'll
Talk
just
to us
talk
about
amongst
games.
ourselves because we like to
And
talk
you can
to each
just
other.
listen. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
to do that, yeah.
We do that a lot. So
But we welcome you all.
yes, please.
And if you
It's
see us
fun.
around the con, just say hi.
Mm-hmm.
We're all super friendly.
Sometimes too friendly.
Yeah, maybe. Speak for yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say Justin.
What is
Just
too
that.
friendly? What is too friendly?
That is another panel for another time.
Yeah. I was at an event weekend last weekend, and I was talking to these two people, and I was like, oh, I'm Robert, by the way. And they're like, oh my God, we totally didn't even share our names. And I was like, well, we didn't have sex yet, so that's not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I will probably forget it, so let's just keep it moving. Honestly, like, it's not gonna stick in my head for at least another few days. So
Thank you all for joining us today for Polysort Adventures, Gaming Culture, and Polyamory. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. We look forward to seeing you guys out and about on the floor and in the gamer lounge. Thank you, everybody, for coming.